A sequel to Batman Arkham Origins has been a highly requested game in the Arkham community for a very long time. Last year, we finally got Batman Arkham Shadow, which pretty much fulfilled the promise of an Arkham Origins sequel. We got to see the early years of Harvey Dent and Jonathan Crane and Harley Quinn. We got a character arc for Batman that further developed his characterization in the Arkhamverse. But you might be surprised at just how much pre-Asylum Arkham content there already was. Even before Batman Arkham Shadow, we had Batman Assault on Arkham, a Suicide Squad-led animated film set in the Arkhamverse. We had Arkham Origins Blackgate, which was a handheld sequel to Arkham Origins that released the same year. The developer behind Batman Arkham Origins, WB Games Montreal, developed the Batgirl, a Matter of Family DLC for Arkham Knights, which also took place before Batman Arkham Asylum. They also brought us Cold Cold Heart, a DLC to Arkham Origins that showcased the origin of Mr. Freeze. Even with all of these pre-Asylum stories already in the Arkhamverse, there's still been a desire to see the early years of this continuity explored further in games. There's been a desire to see Batman's first encounter with Ra's al Ghul and Talia al Ghul. Were the Court of Owls involved in Gotham at some point? Did Batman ever go up against the Phantasm or Prometheus? While it's very possible that this is the trajectory Rocksteady will take their next Arkham game, maybe they'll bring in Roger Craig Smith and do a game set between Arkham Shadow and Arkham Asylum, there actually almost was another AAA game set during this time period. It has been extensively leaked by Jason Schreier, a very reputable leaker, and many other reliable sources, that WB Games Montreal at one point actually was working on a game that would act as pretty much a direct sequel to Arkham Origins. It was not, however, going to be another Batman game. It was going to be a Suicide Squad game. By all accounts, it was going to be a very different beast than the Suicide Squad game we eventually got from Rocksteady, in which we kill the Justice League and play through a live service looter shooter. There were some similarities in that there was going to be an open world, there were going to be multiple playable characters, there was going to be some character customization. However, there were also plenty of differences. It sounds like this probably would have been a Gotham-centric story, and by all accounts, it pretty much would have been a direct sequel to Arkham Origins, just with different protagonists. There are a ton of leaks about characters that would have shown up in the game and what the general plot would have been, but it's also important to keep in mind that all of these rumors should be taken with a huge grain of salt, as back in 2016 and 17, it felt like everyone and their mother was posting a new Arkhamverse leak on 4chan and Reddit. Whether fabricated or not, though, I actually think a lot of the leaks and rumors about this game probably were accurate, because it's what the previous games were building toward. We saw at the end of Arkham Origins that Deathstroke was being recruited into the Suicide Squad. With Deathstroke's very positive fan reception, it would have been a very odd exclusion to not have him in the game in some capacity, so we can assume that Deathstroke was likely going to play a lead role. Also, unsurprisingly, Harley Quinn was imagined to have a lead role in this game. There's actually some concept art for her that was leaked. If you go look it up, because I'm not going to put it in this video and get copyright striked by Warner Brothers, but if you look it up, it actually looks oddly similar to her Gotham Knights attire. This leads me to believe that a lot like the canceled Damian Wayne Batman game, a lot of the ideas that were scrapped when this project was canceled were later reutilized and reimagined into Gotham Knights. The two other playable characters of the roster were supposedly Deadshot, who would have had a bit of a rivalry with Deathstroke, and Killer Croc. The game would have featured two-player functionality similar to Gotham Knights, and it also would have featured an open-world Gotham City, and it was also rumored that Metropolis and even Star City could have potentially been part of the game's map. Supposedly, Batman and Robin were going to be playable in a mini-campaign of their own. Would this have been part of the main story or a Cold Cold Heart style DLC that released after the base game? I'm not sure, but this actually maybe is the thing I would have most liked to see out of this project. It could have been super cool to see Batman and Robin working together in the earlier years of the Arkhamverse in a multiplayer campaign that I could play through with my friend, and the narrative could have focused on building up the characters of Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson. Overall, Suicide Squad from WB Games Montreal I think had some potential, and it's clearly what they were leading up toward with the post-credits scene of Arkham Origins, a lot of the setup in Arkham Origins Blackgate, and even the animated film Assault on Arkham. This was clearly a project that they had in mind. So why was it canceled? Well, a lot like the rumors of what the game was going to entail, we don't really have official confirmation. We have a lot of rumors and leaks. We really only for sure know that there was a lot of troubled development going on at this time. A lot of things were being leaked, which I think gave Warner Brothers some cold feet about the games they were producing. But it's not really surprising or a stretch to imagine that these games were in a bit of development hell, because if the development of these games was going great, we would have gotten them. Rumors state that Suicide Squad's biggest issue is that it simply wasn't very fun. They had a hard time getting the game to mesh. There were multiple playable characters, and it was difficult to create an open world that would suit any of the characters you were playing as. For example, you could make Deathstroke and Harley Quinn play very differently from each other, but what if you then build a side mission that's tailored to Harley Quinn, and then you're exploring the open world as Deathstroke? Should you be able to complete that side mission? Should you have to come back later as Harley Quinn? Will that break the flow of gameplay? Or do you make it so that Deathstroke can complete that side mission as well, but now he plays way more similarly to Harley Quinn? There were a lot of issues that I'd imagine Warner Brothers Games Montreal faced while developing this game. Going from one playable character to multiple is never a small feat, and we've seen that with Gotham Knights and Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, it can often lead to a result that fans are less happy with. Additionally, it seems that the multiplayer was giving them some difficulty. They were having a hard time making the combat system work with more than one player engaging with it at a time. Apparently, traversal wasn't fun across the board. Not every character was fun to traverse across the city with, and they tried to remedy this by giving every character a grappling hook. And you can imagine why maybe as you're stomping around the city with Killer Croc, pulling out a grappling hook and jumping to the top of a skyscraper would maybe feel a little out of character. It really is a shame to me that we never have gotten a truly great Arkhamverse title where we get to play as the villains, because to me that feels like such a cool idea, and that's been an idea that's really been conceptualized since the beginning of the Arkhamverse, when we got to play as Joker in the challenge maps. In Batman Arkham Origins, there was a ton of cut content, and one of the features was actually that you would get to play as the villains hunting down Batman. It seems like that idea was reworked into the full Arkham Origins sequel in the form of Suicide Squad, where that would take center stage as the main premise. Narratively, the game was going to feature Joker as a villain, surprise, surprise, and Batman as a target for the Suicide Squad. So I guess in that way it would have been kind of similar to Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. It likely would have featured the Suicide Squad going up against Batman and existing members of the Bat family. Supposedly, the whole thing really felt like a retreading of the Arkham Origins story, where a bunch of villains are tasked with taking out Batman, except now you're just playing as the villains. And once again, you have Joker throwing a wrench into everything by jumping in and being his chaotic self. Having a story that essentially felt like a retread of the previous game with new playable characters that weren't nearly as fun to play as, a multiplayer system that felt messy, and an open world that didn't really complement anything led to the parent company Warner Brothers not being thrilled when they finally saw what the game looked like. As a result, this Suicide Squad game was canceled, as was the other game Warner Brothers Games Montreal was simultaneously working on, their Batman Beyond style game featuring Damian Wayne as the main protagonist. In 2022, we finally got Warner Brothers Games Montreal's new game, Gotham Knights. Interestingly enough, it seemed to take a lot of the ideas from the Damian Wayne Batman game that got canceled and the Suicide Squad game that got canceled and repurpose them for its own use. We got the Bat Bike and the Court of Owls that were rumored to appear in the Damian Wayne game, and we got the multiplayer and the customization and multiple playable characters of Suicide Squad. So here's the question of the day. Would you have preferred to see Warner Brothers Games Montreal's Suicide Squad over Gotham Knights and or Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League from Rocksteady? Personally, I've never really been shy about acknowledging that I really didn't like the mean-spirited approach to Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. I found the gameplay to be incredibly repetitive, and I felt that the live service mechanics were actually a huge detriment to that game. And as far as Gotham Knights, I didn't hate it. I felt that it was a serviceable entry in the AAA Batman gaming space, but I thought the story was significantly more shallow than Batman stories we've seen in previous games. I thought that the gameplay felt a little bit watered down in comparison to previous entries. But overall, I thought the game was fine and serviceable. I would have liked a little bit more out of it, but it was fine. So would I have preferred Suicide Squad from Warner Brothers Games Montreal to either of these games? My honest answer is no. There's a lot of games that Warner Brothers has canceled that I really just don't understand the reasoning behind. The Wonder Woman game from Monolith, for example. The Flash game that Warner Brothers Games Montreal was working on after Gotham Knights, which again, I'll talk about in another video. There's a lot of games that they've canceled that I just don't understand the reasoning for canceling. But with Warner Brothers Games Montreal's Suicide Squad game, supposedly you had characters that weren't very fun to play as, a traversal system that wasn't very fun, open world activities that weren't very interesting to engage with, a story that was basically just a retread of Arkham Origins from the perspective of the villains, and multiplayer that was essentially broken. Even a lot of the ideas that were lifted from Suicide Squad and put into Gotham Knights, like a Batman boss fight and multiple playable characters and multiplayer and customization, I didn't think added to the experience on the level that I would have liked it to. In pretty much every respect, Gotham Knights feels like a reworked version of the Damian Wayne game and the Suicide Squad game with better execution. So if Gotham Knights is basically the 2.0 version of Warner Brothers Games Montreal's Suicide Squad, I almost shudder to imagine what that 1.0 version might have looked like. I will say that I think there was potential in the idea. I don't think that this was a waste of time to think about doing. I think doing a sequel to Arkham Origins where you reframe it with Batman almost as the antagonist and the villains as the protagonists is an interesting idea. It could have given Warner Brothers Games Montreal the opportunity to remain in the Arkhamverse but also start their own IP, to start a Suicide Squad franchise within the Arkhamverse that they could have fully clung to and become the main developers of. Sadly, it sounds like the overall idea just wasn't planned out very well and didn't have a very cohesive vision. It didn't have a story that it was just itching to tell. It kind of felt like it was doing a Suicide Squad game just to do a Suicide Squad game. I would have loved to have seen a fresh take on the Arkhamverse villains where they get a ton more character development and where we as players get a ton of new interesting gameplay mechanics, but that sadly doesn't feel like the game they were trying to make. At the end of the day, I'm obviously not happy that developers had to spend a lot of time and that a lot of money was spent on this project that never saw the light of day. That's always sad to me when someone who's been working really hard on something has the rug swept out from under them and their work is completely shelved. And who knows, maybe these rumors are wrong. Maybe this game really was shaping up to be something great. But everything I've heard about this game makes it one of the few cases in which Warner Brothers has canceled a project that I feel like I can kind of see where they were coming from. But those are my thoughts on the matter. Please feel free to leave yours in the comments below. Would you have preferred this Suicide Squad game from Warner Brothers Games Montreal to Rocksteady's Kill the Justice League and or Gotham Knights? Would you have preferred it over those games? Let me know in the comments below, and also please be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. I'll have more content like this coming very soon. Thank you all so much for watching and for your support. It truly means the world to me. We will see you guys in the next one.